I don't even know where to start with this, because my ex-fiancée Laura dumped me completely out of nowhere, and I'm still trying to understand how everything fell apart so fast when I honestly thought we were fine. Like, yeah, we had our ups and downs, but who doesn't? Right? We were together for 4 years, we were planning to get married, and then suddenly she sits me down and tells me we need to break up, not with some huge dramatic fight or cheating scandal or anything like that, but because of my job. Yeah, my job, the one I've had at my family's restaurant, and I swear at first I thought she had to be joking, because my schedule was never some big secret. She's known about it since day one, even before we got engaged. She knew my hours were all over the place. I work evenings, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays I'm there from 4:30 to 9 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays I stay a little later, and sure, by the time I get home she's already been off work for 3 or 4 hours since. She works from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., but it's not like I'm never around. We had Sundays, some mornings, and most Saturdays before my shift even started. So I honestly never thought it was that big of a deal. But Laura clearly did, because she started saying we barely see each other and that I need to find a new job since she was tired of waiting around for me to get home every night. And I get that it sucks to have time alone. I'm not denying that. But I genuinely thought we were making it work. I even offered for her to work with me at the restaurant because I thought it made sense. We'd get more time together. She wouldn't be bored waiting around, and we could save more money for the wedding. But she shut that down immediately, said she wasn't comfortable working for my parents, and fine. Okay, I respected that. I didn't push because I didn't want her to feel awkward. But then every few weeks it came up again. When are you going to find something better? I don't see how this is sustainable. And it really started getting on my nerves because how many times do I have to explain that I'm happy where I am? I love working for my family. The restaurant has been in the family for years. And yeah, the hours can be long sometimes, but it's worth it to me. So then one night she just sits me down and says, "Ethan, I can't do this anymore." And at first I honestly thought she was kidding. But she wasn't. She was completely serious. And she told me that if I wasn't willing to change jobs, she couldn't see how we could ever get married, which completely blindsided me. I tried to tell her we could figure it out, that there had to be some way to balance things better. But she shut that down too and said she needed more from me. More time, more effort, more commitment to our future. Whatever that even means, and I told her I was committed. I mean, we were literally planning a wedding. How much more committed can you get? But what really hurt was when she said she felt like I didn't care enough about her needs, because that felt so unfair. I've been busting my ass working late shifts so we could save up for our future together. It's not like I'm out partying or ignoring her. I'm working for us, and I really thought that would count for something, but apparently it didn't, and then she hit me with the whole "maybe we should just be friends" line, and that was a straight gut punch, because there wasn't even an argument, no yelling, no big fight. She was just sitting there calm and collected like she'd rehearsed the whole thing in her head for weeks. So I asked her flat out if she was serious, if she really wanted to throw everything away over my job, and she had the nerve to say it wasn't just my job. It was that I didn't seem willing to change for us. And that's when I finally got angry and reminded her that she knew about my schedule before we even got engaged. And if it was such a huge problem for her, why the hell did she agree to marry me in the first place? She agreed to marry me in the first place. And when I said that out loud, she got all defensive and told me she thought that over time I'd grow out of it and find something else. And I remember just sitting there thinking, grow out of it? Like what? Since when is working hard at a family business something you're supposed to grow out of? And I'm not going to lie, that's when I really felt betrayed, because she basically admitted she'd been waiting for me to turn into some different version of myself, and when that didn't happen she was ready to walk away. So after that conversation I just avoided her. I couldn't even look at her. I stayed late at work every night because the last thing I wanted was to come home and sit in the same house with someone who didn't want to be with me anymore. But here's the thing, she didn't leave like I assumed she would. Because after you break up, especially when you're engaged, you'd think the other person would start looking for somewhere else to stay, right? But nope, she kept acting like nothing had changed, like we were just roommates now or something. Every time I came home she was there on the couch watching TV like everything was totally fine. And honestly it made me feel sick, because how do you break up with someone and still live under their roof like nothing happened? So one night I finally said it out loud. I told her, "Laura, you need to move out. We're not together anymore and this isn't working for me." And get this, she looked at me like I had two heads and asked if I was serious, like I was the crazy one. Said, "Are you really kicking me out?" And I told her, "Yes, I am. We're not getting married anymore, so what's the point of living together?" And then she tried to guilt trip me. saying she had nowhere to go and that I was being heartless for making her leave, and at that point I was just done. I told her she could stay with her parents until she figured things out, and then on top of everything else I asked for the ring back, and you'd think I had just slapped her across the face. She completely freaked out, saying I gave it to her and I couldn't just ask for it back. And I told her straight up that ring was for our wedding, and since we're not getting married I want it back. And she called me greedy, said I could afford another one if I really loved her, and said I was being an asshole for trying to kick her out after everything we'd been through. And honestly, I didn't even have the energy to argue anymore. I just wanted her gone. But after I told Laura she needed to move out, things got awkward really fast, because you'd think she would have packed her bags and left, right? But no, she stuck around like she was waiting for something, and at first I thought she was just dragging her feet trying to figure out where to go. Even though she had options, her parents lived nearby and she had friends she could crash with, but instead she just stayed. And those few days after the breakup were some of the most uncomfortable days of my life. We were living like strangers in the same house. She'd sit on one side of the room, I'd be on the other, and there was this heavy silence where neither of us wanted to be the first to speak. I'd get home from work and she'd already be there watching TV or doing her own thing. But it felt like there was this giant elephant in the room that neither of us wanted to deal with, and then it somehow got even worse. Because one day I came home and Laura was sitting at the kitchen table with my mom. Yeah, my mom. Apparently she had called her over without telling me. So I walk in and they're sitting there having coffee like everything is totally normal. And I was so confused. And my mom looks at me and says, "Ethan, we need to talk." And I was already annoyed, but I tried to stay calm because she's my mom. So I sit down and Laura starts telling her side of the story, saying she has nowhere to go and how it's unfair that I'm asking her to move out so soon after the breakup. And then my mom, bless her heart, starts suggesting that maybe we could work something out and that Laura could stay a bit longer while she figures things out. And I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just stared at them for a second and said, "Mom, we're not together anymore. Why would I let her stay here?" And my mom, always the peacekeeper, says, "Well, she needs time to figure things out. It's not easy to just up and move, you know." And I tried really hard to stay calm. But inside I was absolutely fuming, because yeah, I get that it's not easy to move, but we broke up, we weren't a couple anymore. So why should I have to keep putting up with this? And I finally looked at Laura and said, "You've had time. It's been almost a week. You need to leave." And of course that's when she got emotional, saying she thought I was better than this, that she never expected me to just toss her out like trash. And then she started tearing up right there in front of my mom, and I swear it felt like she was trying to paint me as the bad guy, and my mom immediately jumped in trying to smooth things over, saying, "Ethan, maybe you could give her a little more time. You two were together for so long. It's not easy to just end things like this." And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mom was taking Laura's side, and don't get me wrong, I love my mom, but this wasn't her call to make. So I told her straight up, "Mom, this isn't your business. Laura and I are done. She needs to go." And that's when Laura pulled the ultimate guilt trip, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you really loved me you wouldn't be doing this. I thought you cared about me." And man, that hit hard, because I didn't want to be the bad guy. But at the same time I kept thinking, how long was I supposed to let this drag on? She was the one who ended things, not me, and now she was trying to flip it around like I was being unreasonable. But I stood my ground and told her I do care. But we're not together anymore. This isn't your home. You need to move on. And she stormed out of the room while my mom just sat there looking disappointed, like I was the one who messed everything up. And she gave me this look and said she just hoped I was doing the right thing. And that stuck with me for a while, made me question myself, wonder if I was being too harsh or if I should have given her more time. But then I thought about how she'd been dragging this out, trying to stay in the house and making me uncomfortable in my own place, and I knew I wasn't wrong. This was my house, my space, and she was trying to manipulate the situation to make herself the victim. And then the next day I came home and Laura was gone. Her stuff was still there, but she wasn't. And at first I felt this huge wave of relief, thinking maybe she'd finally decided to move out. But nope, it was just another game. Because she came back late that night acting all nonchalant like nothing had happened. Didn't say a word to me. Just went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. And that was it for me. I was done. I couldn't deal with it anymore. So I texted her and told her she had until the end of the week to get her stuff out and leave, or I was going to start the eviction process. And I know that sounds harsh, but what else was I supposed to do? She wasn't taking me seriously and I wasn't about to spend another week living in that weird, messed up situation. And then she texted back saying she couldn't believe I was being like this, that she thought we could at least be friends, but I was treating her like a stranger, and that's when it really hit me that she was never going to leave unless I forced her to. She was playing the whole thing like a game, probably hoping I'd cave, apologize, or beg her to stay, but I wasn't about to do that, not after everything she'd put me through, and by the end of the week she finally started packing her stuff, turning it into this big dramatic production, huffing and puffing every time she moved a box like she wanted me to feel sorry for her. But I didn't. I felt bad that things ended the way they did. Sure, but I wasn't going to let her stay just because she didn't feel like moving, and then came the ring, the damn ring. I thought that whole thing was over, but she tried again, saying she couldn't believe I was actually asking for it back and that she cared about me. And this time I didn't even argue. I just told her we're not getting married. The ring was for the wedding, no ring, and she looked at me like I was the biggest jerk on the planet. But she finally handed it over, and honestly the moment she did it felt like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Like the final chapter of our relationship had closed and I could finally move on. And now it's been a few days since she left and I genuinely feel better than I have in months. It's weird not having her around, but it's also freeing, because I don't have to walk on eggshells in my own house anymore, and I don't have to deal with her trying to guilt-trip me every 5 seconds anymore. And yeah, do I miss her? A little. But not enough to ever go back to that mess. Because sometimes things just need to end, and dragging them out only makes everything worse. Update 1. After Laura finally moved out I really thought things would settle down. Like okay, we're done. She's gone. I can finally get back to normal. But man, I was wrong. Because things got weird fast, and the first thing I realized was how much of her stuff she had actually left behind. It was like every room in the house had something of hers in it. Clothes, books, random things, even her toothbrush was still sitting in the bathroom, and at first I didn't want to touch any of it. But after a couple of days I was like, okay, this is getting ridiculous, so I started packing her things into boxes, figuring I'd just drop them off at her parents' house or something and be done with it. But then while I was going through her stuff I found something that completely threw me off, and I don't even know how to explain it. But I found this notebook she had hidden in one of her drawers, and I'm not the kind of guy who snoops through someone else's things, but she left it there. So I opened it, and what I found was basically a whole diary of complaints about me and our relationship. Page after page of stuff like Ethan never listens to me. He doesn't care about my feelings. Why can't he just get a normal job like other guys? And it honestly felt like reading a list of everything she hated about me. And I'm not going to lie, it messed with my head, because I know no relationship is perfect, but seeing all of that written out like that was rough. I had no idea she felt that way. I knew we had issues, but I didn't think it was anywhere near that bad. And the worst part was reading how she'd been thinking about breaking up with me for months, just waiting for the right time. And I remember thinking, what does that even mean? The right time to end someone's life plans? Because that's exactly what we were doing, planning a life together. And meanwhile she was already halfway out the door pretending everything was fine. So after reading all of it I just felt this weird mix of anger and sadness, because yeah, I knew the relationship was over, but finding that notebook made it so much more real. It wasn't just about work schedules or hours anymore. She'd mentally checked out a long time ago and I never even saw it. I sat there for a while just staring at the pages, trying to figure out if I missed something obvious or if I'd been completely blind the whole time, and then it finally hit me. She never really wanted to marry me. She just wanted me to be someone I wasn't. She wanted me to quit my job, change my life, and turn into this ideal version of myself that didn't even exist. And no matter what I did I was never going to live up to that. So of course she broke up with me. I put the notebook away and tried to distract myself, but it kept eating at me. I couldn't stop thinking about everything she'd written, like this constant voice in the back of my head telling me maybe I wasn't good enough. And that's the thing about breakups. They make you question everything, every conversation, every argument, every time you said I love you, and you start wondering if any of it meant what you thought it did. A few days later Laura texted me, and I hadn't heard from her since she moved out. So I wasn't expecting it at all. But the text wasn't what I thought it would be. She didn't want to check in or talk about the breakup. She just wanted to come by and pick up a few things. And I remember thinking, okay, you've been gone for over a week and now you want to come back for your stuff. But I agreed and told her to give me a heads up before she came over because the last thing I needed was to walk in and find her there without warning. So she came over and it was just as awkward as you'd imagine. She barely looked at me when she walked in, just went straight to grabbing her things like she couldn't wait to leave. And I stood there in the living room trying to act normal. But the whole thing felt so wrong, because we'd shared a life together. We were planning a wedding. and now she felt like a stranger just stopping by to collect her stuff, and then something strange happened, because as she was grabbing her things she stopped and looked at me for the first time in days. We actually made eye contact, and she just stood there like she wanted to say something but couldn't get the words out, and I don't know why, but I felt like I had to say something, so I asked, "Is everything okay?" And then she said something I'll never forget. She goes, "I didn't want it to end like this." I didn't know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? We're already here. It's already over. I just stood there, not knowing what to say, and she looked at me like she was waiting for me to fix everything. But I couldn't. How was I supposed to fix something that had been broken for months? Maybe even years, and I didn't even realize it. She grabbed the last of her stuff and left without saying another word. The door closed, and just like that, she was gone again. It was this weird mix of relief and sadness. I was glad the whole mess was finally over, but at the same time it felt like this huge chapter of my life had closed and I wasn't ready for it. After she left, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a therapist. I know, sounds dramatic, but I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe there was something wrong with me, that maybe I'd missed something huge in our relationship, or maybe I just wasn't cut out for long-term commitment. I wasn't sure what to expect, but talking to someone outside the situation actually helped. The therapist didn't give me all the answers, but she made me realize I wasn't the only one to blame. Relationships are two-sided, and as much as I messed up in some areas, Laura had her part too. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't the villain either. One thing that really stuck with me was the idea that sometimes people fall in love with the idea of someone, not who they really are. Looking back, that's exactly what Laura did with me. She wanted me to be a version of myself that didn't exist, and when I didn't become that person, she started to check out. Here I am, a couple of months later, feeling better, not great, but better. I still think about her sometimes, and yeah, I wonder what could have been different, but I also know if she had stayed, things probably would have gotten worse. We weren't right for each other, and that's just the truth. Sometimes things end for a reason. It sucks, it hurts, but in the long run, it's better than forcing something that's never going to work. Update 2. After Laura left for good, I thought that was it, end of the story. Turns out, things weren't as done as I thought. I didn't realize how many loose ends there were until I started getting messages from mutual friends. It started off slow, texts here and there asking how I was doing, which was fine, but then little comments started slipping in, like, "Laura said she's really struggling," or "Have you heard from her?" At first, I brushed it off, thinking people were just being polite, trying to feel out the situation. But then the tone changed. People started acting like I was the one who kicked her to the curb with no warning. I'm sitting here thinking, did Laura not tell anyone she's the one who broke up with me? Apparently not. Next thing I know, I'm getting long, guilt-trippy messages from some of her friends, people I barely even know, saying I was heartless for making her move out and asking for the ring back. Excuse me? She broke up with me. I wasn't about to keep living with my ex-fiancée pretending everything's fine while she went around telling people I'm the bad guy. But according to her, I'm the one who didn't care enough to work things out. So now I'm stuck in this weird situation where everyone sees me as the villain, and she's playing the victim. It's mind-blowing how fast things can get flipped around. I had to start explaining to people what actually happened, and every time I did, it felt exhausting. Why do I even have to defend myself? A week or two goes by. I think things are finally dying down. I stopped getting messages, stopped hearing from people about Laura, and I start to relax. But of course, that didn't last. One night, I'm sitting at home watching TV, trying to unwind after a long shift at the restaurant, and my phone buzzes. It's a text from Laura's best friend, Jenna. Now, Jenna and I never really got along. She was always the type to get in Laura's ear, stirring the pot, so I knew this wasn't going to be good. I open the message, and sure enough, it's a novel. Jenna goes on and on about how devastated Laura is, how I broke her heart by not fighting for the relationship, how I should have tried harder to make things work. She even said something like, "You're supposed to be a team, and you just gave up on her." I was so angry I could barely respond. But I did. I texted her back and kept it short and simple. I said, Laura broke up with me. She's the one who wanted out. I'm not going to beg someone to stay when they don't want to. Of course, Jenna didn't leave it at that. She kept texting, trying to guilt-trip me, saying how Laura was hurting, that she needed time, and maybe if I reached out, things could be different. But I wasn't having it. I told her straight up, we're done. It's over. Let it go. That was the last I heard from her for a while. Then one day, I'm at the restaurant, just trying to get through the dinner rush, when my mom comes over with that look. You know, the one moms give when they've got something to say but are figuring out how to say it. She pulls me aside and says, Ethan, I talked to Laura today. I just stared at her, like, why? My mom goes, well, she called me. Said she wanted to apologize for how things ended and just wanted to check in. Now, I don't know about you, but when your ex calls your mom to check in, that's a major red flag. I told my mom, I don't care if she's sorry or not. We're done. There's no reason for her to be calling you. My mom sighed and said, I know, but she seemed really upset. She said she feels like you hate her now and she didn't want things to end this way. Here we go again. I had to explain the whole situation again. How Laura was the one who ended it. How she's been telling people I kicked her out, and how I just want to move on. I could tell my mom felt torn, but she finally got it and agreed not to get involved anymore. Honestly, it was frustrating that I even had to have that conversation. After that, things really started to calm down. I didn't hear from Jenna, Laura stopped calling my mom, and I finally felt like I could move on. I even started hanging out with friends again, going out for drinks after work, just trying to get back to some sense of normal. But just when I thought everything was finally settling, something else happened. One night, I'm at the bar with a couple of buddies when one of them, Mark, pulls me aside and says, hey man, you're not going to like this, but I saw Laura the other day with some guy. Now, I wasn't expecting to feel anything when he said that, but for some reason, it hit me. I knew we were done, but hearing that she'd moved on already, that was rough. I asked Mark who he was. He said he didn't know, but they looked pretty close. That was all I needed to hear. The next few days were weird. I didn't text Laura or anything, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because I wanted her back, but because it felt like this chapter of my life was really, truly over. Now she was moving on, and I guess that meant I had to as well. Looking back, I realized Laura probably checked out long before we even broke up. Maybe that's why it all felt so sudden when it happened. For her, it wasn't sudden. She'd been planning it, thinking about it, and by the time she ended it, she was already halfway out the door. It took me a while to accept that. It's hard to admit that someone you cared about stopped caring way before you did. But you know what? In the end, it's for the best. We weren't right for each other, and trying to force it would have just made things worse. Now I'm focused on myself. I'm not looking for a relationship anytime soon, and I'm definitely not in any rush to jump back into the dating pool. I'm just trying to enjoy the little things again, hanging out with friends, focusing on work, getting my life back to where I want it to be. And as for Laura, I wish her the best, I really do, but I'm done with the guilt trips, the manipulation, and the drama. I'm moving on. Update 3. Months later, I finally feel like I can breathe again. It's been a hell of a ride, and honestly, I'm just glad it's over. But just when I thought everything was behind me, I got hit with one last curve. Surprise. Because of course, something else had to happen, right? Here's what went down. I was at work one day, just doing my thing at the restaurant, when one of our regulars, Tom, comes in. Now, Tom's an older guy, been coming to the restaurant for years, real friendly with my family, always chatting with my parents whenever he's in. But this time he's got this weird look on his face. He pulls me aside and says, hey Ethan, I saw Laura the other night. At this point, I'm thinking, alright, whatever, people see Laura all the time, what's new? But then he drops this little nugget. She was with my cousin Chris. I swear, my brain short-circuited for a second. I'm like, wait, what? Chris? No way. I mean, Chris and I are family, we grew up together. There's no way he'd be hanging out with my ex-fiancée. But Tom was dead serious. He goes, "Yeah man, they were at that new bar downtown. Seemed real close, if you know what I mean." I didn't know what to say. Part of me didn't believe it, but another part of me was like, well, this is Laura we're talking about, so who knows? I just kind of laughed it off and told Tom I'd check it out later, but inside I was boiling. I had no idea what to think. Why would Chris, of all people, be hanging out with Laura, and why didn't anyone tell me? Naturally, I did what any guy would do. I went straight to the source. I texted Chris that night, asked him what was up. I didn't want to accuse him of anything outright, so I kept it casual. "Hey man, heard you were out with Laura the other night. What's going on there?" It took him a while to respond, and when he did, the response was, well, let's just say it wasn't what I was expecting. He goes, "Yeah, we've been hanging out a bit. I didn't want to tell you 'cause I knew it would be awkward." Awkward? Awkward doesn't even begin to cover it. My cousin, my flesh and blood, was hanging out with my ex-fiancée behind my back, and he thought it was just a little awkward. I was pissed. Beyond pissed. I shot back, "Dude, what the hell? You couldn't give me a heads up." He tried to play it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, that they were just friends. Nothing serious. But come on, we all know what just friends means, especially when it's between an ex and your cousin. I wasn't buying it, and I told him straight up that I felt betrayed. He started backpedaling, saying he didn't mean for it to happen, that they just bumped into each other one night and things kind of escalated from there. Apparently, they'd been talking for a few weeks. Weeks. I had to sit with that for a while. I mean, how do you even process something like that? It wasn't just about Laura anymore. It was about family. Someone I trusted, someone I grew up with, decided it was cool to start hanging out with my ex like nothing was wrong. And honestly, it hurt more than I thought it would. A few days later, I got a text from Laura herself. She didn't even try to ease into it. Just hit me with, "Hey, I heard you're upset about me and Chris. Can we talk?" I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear her excuses or explanations or whatever she was about to throw at me. But at the same time, I needed closure. I needed to know why she thought this was okay. So against my better judgment, I agreed to meet up. We met at this coffee shop we used to go to when we were still together. Bad idea. By the way, too many memories. She sits down and immediately launches into this whole spiel about how she didn't mean to hurt me, how she and Chris just clicked, and that she didn't want things to get weird between us. I sat there trying to keep my cool, but honestly, I just wanted to walk out. I told her, "It's not about you guys clicking, it's about respect. You ended things with me, and now you're hanging out with my cousin. You didn't think that might be a problem." She gave me some crap about how she didn't plan for this to happen, that it just did, and that she didn't want to hurt me. But I wasn't buying it. I told her straight up, "You made your choice. You don't get to walk back into my life and act like everything's cool now." The conversation didn't go anywhere. She tried to justify it. I wasn't having it, and we both walked away more frustrated than before. I didn't feel any better, but at least I got to say my piece. After that, I blocked her number. I didn't want to deal with her anymore. As for Chris, we had it out too. He called me a few days later, trying to clear the air. I let him talk, but I didn't hold back. I told him he broke my trust, and that's not something you just bounce back from. He apologized, said he didn't mean for things to get messy, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. Family or not, there's a line you don't cross, and he crossed it. Since then, I've been keeping my distance from both of them. Chris still tries to text me now and then, but I haven't responded. Maybe one day I'll get over it, but right now I need space. As for Laura, she's out of my life for good. I don't know if she's still with Chris, and honestly, I don't care. They can do whatever they want. I'm done. Looking back, this whole situation taught me a lot. Not just about relationships, but about people in general. You think you know someone, you think you can trust them, and then they go and do something like this. It messes with your head, but at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond. And right now, My response is to walk away. I've got my own life to live, my own goals to chase, and I'm not letting this drama drag me down anymore.